and what this war was all about. What is there in it for us to learn in the here and now, in today's day and time? Right. Let's look across to the other civilization, which is the only one that can hold a candle to the Indian, that is the Chinese, as ancient, and a civilization which has unbroken past. A continuum that flows in from the past and comes to the present. And here, in the Chinese, we have a period called the period of the warring civilizations, right? That is from 471 to about 221 BC. There were 6 states in China, 6 major states in China, who were constantly at war with one another. And most of the Chinese theories and writings on warfare, like Sun Tzu or Sun Tzu as they call them, are traced back to this period of the warring kingdoms. And you know that most Chinese scholars feel that this period of the warring kingdom, that there were 6 major kingdoms in China, constantly at war with one another, is deeply analogous to the situation today, when we have a situation of what is called multipolarity. In the Cold War period, we had a bipolar world order with Russia and the United States as the 2 poles. But now that period is over. We had a period of unipolarity, and now we are heading towards multipolarity. Now please don't forget that multipolar world orders were in place before World War I, before World War II. And multipolar orders always lead to great amount of war and conflict. Right? So this period, the Chinese state, was a period of multipolarity. Therefore the context is the same. The context in the period of the warring kingdom in China and the present day context. And do you know that they feel that there are valuable lessons to be learned from this historical period? Right? The senior Colonel Liu Chongzi of the Strategic Department of the National Defense University of China, he says that a multipolar world order today is amazingly similar to the warring states era. Incidentally, in the year of the Lord 1996, the General Staff Department of the People's Liberation Army of China published 6 volumes of studies of ancient statecraft and war-fighting strategies of that ancient period that contained advice on how to comprehend the current and the future security environment based upon an analysis of the ancient past. This is the way the Chinese give such a lot of significance to their past, to their Chinese context. They say military modernization in a Chinese context, in a Chinese perspective, based upon Chinese history. They don't want to borrow lock, stock and barrel from Western sources and westernize themselves in the bargain. They insist on the relevance of that culture to their current day concept. Let's now take a look from the Chinese civilization to the Indic civilization. There were 2 periods of multipolarity in our ancient history. 2 periods of multipolarity. One is the period preceding the Mahabharta war, and the other is just before the Mauryan Empire took root in India. Now there is a lot of controversy. I know I'm speaking in the company of distinguished historians. Now they are talking about the entire context of the age of the Mauryan Empire, and the others have now dramatically new evidence has come. But till such time as that becomes into the accepted textbooks of art, we are still going by the old. So that historical minefield I will avoid. Right? But there are 2. What I'm trying to say is there are 2 periods of multipolarity in the Indian context. The Mahabharata period and the period of the formation of the Mauryan Empire, which is the first empire that transformed India from a civilizational entity to, I would say, more or less a nation state or an empire state. Right? The first unification really of the concept of the Rashtra that is spelled out in the Atharva Veda. Rashtra is spoken about so many times. There are references to Rashtra, right? But the first time that happened is in the period of the Mauryan Empire, when Kautilya, was under the guidance of Kautilya, Chandragupta Maurya is able to unify the whole of India into less bits of the south into one vast empire, centralized empire. Now these were periods of multipolarity, and most of the Indian writings on war have emerged in these periods of multipolarity. The Mahabharata, as I mentioned, is an epic that deals with war. Pure and simple war and conflict, statecraft and conflict. Right? It emerged in this period of multipolarity. The second period of multipolarity gave us the Arthashastra, which is once again a treatise on war and conflict. On how wars are to be waged, how wars are to be fought, what is strategy. And they go down to tactics of how to fight, HTF as the Americans put it. How exactly do you conduct the orchestrate the battles? How do you conduct the battles in their tactical execution? All this has been written about in the Indian civilization, and there are tomes and tomes of it. So much of the Arthashastra is lost, but so much that has come through has tremendous amount of relevance for present day Indians. I was teaching before I retired at the National Defence College in Delhi, which is the highest seat of learning of the Indian Armed Forces. Brigadiers come there to learn, and two-star ranked generals teach. And paradoxically, it is just across the road from the Gandhi Museum. It is such a paradox, And then, of course, we walk across the road, and every day we pay, every year, the National Defence College goes to pay its respects to the Mahatma, the father of the nation. Right? And let me tell you, he was a great strategist. I will explain subsequently how. Right? If you see the later Vedic age, there are supposed to be 16 Mahajanapadas. In China, there were 6 warring kingdoms. In this period, which precedes the Mahabharata, in the period that precedes the Mauryan Empire, there are 16 Mahajanapadas, 16 major states in India, constantly at war with one another. And when you are constantly fighting, when you need the acharyas, Brihaspati Acharya, of the gods, Shukracharya, the preceptor of the god, who were masters of the art of warfare, and their Shukra Niti, you see, etc. comes down, Chanakya Niti comes down to us with this day. They were thinkers of war and conflict, right? And this is the period in which they penned down their thoughts. So the first period of the warring kingdoms of multipolarity in India led to the mighty Armageddon of the Mahabharata, right? A destructive and highly debilitating civilizational conflict. Now, some of the Western views that the whole of Asia has been kept in thrall by a petty family feud which not more than a few thousand people fought, I think is nonsense. It is an insult to our cultural intelligence to believe that it was a petty feud blown out of all proportion. There has to be a kernel of truth for the myth to last so long. The Saraswati today has been picked up by satellites. And imagine the memory of that sacred river. Every time you go to the Ganga Asti Bahane ke liye, they tell you of the Saraswati. You have retained that historical memory of a mighty river. And we thought it was a figment of somebody's overactive imagination. The satellites tell you it is a fact on the ground. So, that to say that this war was, a petty family feud and we have blown it out of because of an overactive, hyperactive imagination, I don't think so. There is no smoke without a fire. Memories do not last for 2,500 years or more on the basis of a myth. There has to be a root in reality. Now, the first period, as I said, led to the debilitating civilizational conflict, and thereafter, India broke up, into a whole clan of splinter of tribal republics, Paintons, Ambiraj, Porava, petty clan republics, Vaishali, etc., is all there. And when Alexander comes, he's supposed to have come with an army of 30,000. What Western historians conveniently leave out, that he came with 70,000 Central Asians. He gave it 70,000 circulation. The army as such was 100,000 plus strong. Right? It was a huge army. And much is made about the context or the contest between Paula, a petty border chieftain, and Alexander, the world-conquering hero. He took him on with an army of hardly 30,000, a force of 1 lakh. It was a foregone conclusion that he gave it such a tough fight is itself cause for satisfaction. And you see what happened was, I just jump historical frame of reference a little. Today we talk of information warfare. In that period, you see, the first person to wage information war was the National Security Advisor of the Mauryan state, yet to be formed then, Chandragupta. Chandragupta Maurya's National Security Advisor, Acharya Chanakya, better known as Kautilya. Right? Kautilya felt, he saw the Greek invaders coming in. Here is a foreign farm. And the crystallization of the idea of India actually comes when you hit a non-self, the non-self of the Greeks. It's only then that the idea of India really crystallizes that we are Indians and not citizens of Paulava, citizens of Gandhara, citizens of wherever. So it is in that period, that he felt that the only power that could stand up to Alexander was the Nanda Empire of Magadha, was the strongest of this. And they had 3,000 war elephants and an army of almost 150,000. So it is said that he went to his court and asked him to fight with Alexander. Come forward and defend the civilizational space. And unfortunately, as legend and folklore goes, by that afternoon, the Nanda emperor used to be drunk. He says, this foolish Brahmin trying to advise me, catch him by his tongue and throw him out. And he is unceremoniously thrown out of the court, and he turns around and tells him, you are not fit to rule. And I will see that you go. And people scoffed at him. Get away, you foolish Brahmin. Before that, he doesn't die, gets stopped, he comes back. Now he thinks, what can be done to stop Alexander? So he sends his spies, his charas, his dutas to the Greek camp, and he finds that the 200 war elephants of Porus have made a tremendous impact on the Greek army. The Greeks are terrified of the huge war beasts. They have not seen them ever before in their lives. Right? Till today, ladies and gentlemen, the introduction of a new weapon system terrifies the army. When we went into Sri Lanka, the LTT used the improvised explosive devices against us. And they had an impact out of all proportion. When you ask the boys, what is causing the maximum casualties? They saw the IEDs. And when we actually checked, it was about 20%. Balance 80% is the psychological impact of a new weapon. Of a new weapon. Right? And the point and issue is that this is the time when he said, okay, he invented the myth of the, he says, he sent his, his spies, his notch girls and the others to spread the myth in the Greek camp that look, you have just till now seen only 200 war elephants. The army of the Nandas has 9,000 war elephants. They are bigger, they are 12 feet high. They are trained to crush skulls and they practice on coconut shells. They are trained to pierce you with your armor, with their tusks, pick you up and throw you down so that your armor breaks, then they trample your skull. So when the Greek soldiers heard these lurid tales, they mutinied. It is said that, they mutinied, they refused to go forward. Alexander was a great speaker, and great orator, and he harangued them for 2 to 3 hours, but they refused to move forward. Then he went into a sulk in his tent, and ultimately after 3 days he knew that the army was not willing to fight, go any further. So he retreated along the banks of the Indus. And as he retreated, when troops are heading home, then they fight. They are fighting their way home now. They fought with ferocity. Anybody who resisted, there were slaughters. There were merciless slaughters. And do you know that the Mauryan army was recruited primarily by Kautilya from these people who had suffered? He said, you have suffered because you have not been united. You need to be united under one centralized authority so that India can fight with India. And not as petty fiefdoms and, Rajavadas everywhere. So what we are trying to say is that the Indian strategic culture, which we are still practicing, incidentally in the 1971 war, a lot of the strategy that we used was from the Mauryan period. So our strategic culture comes down to us from the Mahabharta and the Mauryan periods of multipolarity as it comes for the Chinese civilization. Now we just like to focus a little bit on the ideological content of the Mahabharata, right? This is the time when you have the first innings of democracy in an environment which is all, overcome by monarchies, all overcome by, there were all monarchies all over India. Krishna and his Yadava clans start the practice of democracy. He is an elected leader, the Gopa. He is an elected leader of the Yadavas. And just like when France became a republic, all the monarchies of Europe combined to sort of, destroy France, because before this idea gets around and monarchies get overthrown. In a similar way, all the kingdoms around Mathura formed a confederacy led by Jarasandha, of Magadha, to destroy this nascent democratic experiment. And what happened? Krishna leads, he is called Ranchor, a massive retreat from Mathura to Gujarat. Mao Zedong carried out a similar retreat in China during the Chinese Civil War. It's called the Great Strategic Retreat, the Long March. So, in our Indian culture, we say you can't, if anybody leaves the battlefield, he's a coward, he deserves to be spat upon, But this is the way these people, fought and, created that entire context of a new strategic culture. And now when Krishna reached Gujarat, he didn't get marginalized from the geopolitics of the subcontinent. What did he do? He made the two major monarchical powers fight. In the Second World War, the British induced the Germans and the Russians to fight. Don't forget, at the start of the Second World War, the Russians and the Germans had signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop non-aggression pact. What do the British do? Make the two fight. And you watch. The most superior strategy is to make your enemies fight and not fight yourself. And when they destroy one another, you automatically emerge as it is the most superior form of strategy. And Krishna practiced it. No less than Gandhari accused him, look, you have instigated this war. She told him, and she cursed him towards the end, you have instigated this war. Well, in military terms, we do not talk so much of morality. It is about, the state comes first. My country comes first always and every time. And so you find that this kind of an action, did take place. And it shows an example of a very high level of grand strategy. Let's now, there is something called revolution in military affairs. With the Persian Gulf War, we all heard this term. A revolution in military affairs. Now this revolution in military affairs comes when you use a new technology, a new strategy, a new doctrinal, input. So you find that the first RMA in India happened at the time of the later Vedic age, when they started using chariots. And it is with the chariots that they were able to, defeat all the indigenous people who were there and who fought with them. You see, because what does a chariot do? You see, it could carry large quantities of armament, spears, arrows, javelins could be stored in the chariot. It gave limited protection to the combatants. And the mounted platform for fighting would be command and control. Initially we had solid wheels, typical chariots, then we had spoke chariots, which were more efficient. And then, the principle of fighting in that early era was mass into velocity. Both the armies got together in that, like a tournament format in the battlefield, and then they charged at one another. Clear concept of what is called attrition, destruction, mutual slaughter. No maneuver, just mutual slaughter. And then you hear of the battles of the early Vedic age, the sieges of 100 fort cities, destruction of 90 forts of the Dasara ruler Shambhala by King Durvadasa, Indra is called Purandara, destroyer of the forts, right? There are the battles with the Dasas, Panis and other local tribes. Mortimer Weaver tried to sell us the theory that it is the Aryans who destroyed the Indus Valley civilization and the city. But I mean, that has proved to be a myth. You know, there are no skeletons around to prove, in the cupboard also, to prove that, you know, with sword cuts and spear cuts and this thing that it was. And we now know that it was ecological causes that caused it. Did this take more somewhere towards the Persian side or where? We are not very sure. We are still waiting for evidence because most of these fort cities, incidentally, the fort around Magadha was all wood. If you go and see the king's palace in Nepal, it is made of wood. It is fascinating. But 3 centuries down the line, there will not even be a one trace of this, you know. So most of the fort cities that you talk are actually wooden stockades. So they have all vanished without possible trace. There are talks of, one of the major wars that preceded the Mahabharata is the Dasarajan War, the war of the 10 kings, and Sudas on the banks of the Ravi, 1900 BC, I mean that is one day. There are downriver expeditions with boats with 100 oars. Please don't forget, it's almost like the Roman galleys or more. And there is seaborne trade and commerce. Like I said, there were 16 Mahajanapadas and they were constantly at war with one another. This is analogous to the Chinese warring period kingdom, and the form of war had crystallized by now on Chaturanga Bala, army for 4 arms. Ratha, Gajas, Ashwa, Paditi, chariots, horses, elephants, and foot soldiers. Right? Four maneuver masses moving at variable speeds. The infantry moves at one speed, the chariots at another, the horses at another, and the elephants at another. And yet you have to synchronize these 4 variable speed maneuver masses on the battlefield. And to do that, they use a thing called vyuhas, and they use, the game of chess or chaucer, to plan out how to fight on the battlefield. And that led to what is called the concept of the vyuha. This, of course, are the 16 Mahajanapadas that you have. I talk now of vyuhas. Now, the vyuhas were not just a formation, a geometrical formation or an animal-shaped formation. It was a formation with a battle drill. And I will quickly explain to you that. And it was designed to have attrition, and just for some force, destroy the other side, as opposed to maneuver. There was a lot of chivalry, no fighting by night. Now I will explain to you some of the famous vyuhas of the Mahabharata war. This is the Ardha Chandra vyuha, half-moon shaped crescent. Don't forget that as late as the 1965 war with Pakistan, we used this. It was called by the Indian Army U-shaped or shoe-shaped formation. When the Pakistani armored division was attacking at Kempthorne, we suddenly were shocked. We thought they had only 1 armored division. They turned out to have 2. We had attacked with Sialkot thinking the Pakistani armored division is there. So we threw our armored division there. And suddenly the Pakistanis pulled this ace out of their sleeve and they launched the 1st armored division. You see, for Pakistan, the mightiest formation in Pakistan with this thing ki hum namaz, inshallah, Jama Masjid mein padhenge. And they came behind. The plan was to cut you from behind. So it was a very critical situation for India. We had only an armored brigade now to fight with this armored division, 1/3. But what we did was, what our General Harbaksh did was, that area had a lot of canals. We broke the bund of the canals, we inundated that area, and we formed a horseshoe-shaped trap with our armor. So when the Pakistani armored division came charging in, they were hit from 3 sides, Ardha Chandra vyuha gets you from 3 sides. You get into a sack. And this is how, the armored division was destroyed. So these are archetypal. Whether you do it with horses or you do it with tanks, the basic maneuvers remain a cultural constant. Please, this is how it has happened in war. The Arabella maneuver, the Hannibal maneuver. You see, these maneuvers become a constant. They become a cultural archetype, a racial archetype, so to speak. And you see how you use them. One of the most, this is the mother of it. It's called the whale view. The Chinese called it human wave tactics. When they want to attack a particular strong point, it is very important. Bok Chok Hill in Korea is very important. They put their men in wave after wave after wave. You keep killing, they'll keep coming till they overrun you.
You are out of your bloody ammunition. So if you have formed a chakra vyuha, they will choose the weak spot in the chakra vyuha and then come like a wave. Or switching move, needle-shaped formation. The best warrior leads and the others start following up and they open up. They make a breach and they widen the breach. You see, it's still used. It's still used. This is the most interesting vyuha. This is called Shakata vyuha, the T-shaped vyuha. Right? And the Germans in the Second World War used this vyuha. This is called Sarvata Mukha vyuha, which is a variation of the T shape. In front of the T you have a screen of chariots. Right? Now see, in the Second World War, the Germans had a very similar T-shaped vyuha. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This is the tanks. On the two flanks of the T you see the tanks. Right? Then you have a box formed by anti-tank guns. In between are the soft-skinned infantry and the lorry and their logistic vehicles. Right? At the rear are the artillery guns. Now this is the way it moves like a T with a screen of light tanks and anti-tank guns up front. So what happens? The moment you contact the British enemy armor, this T comes to a halt and the screens start retreating to the flanks. This is what it looks like. I'll just show it to you. And I'm going back. Now let's see this. That red dot shows you the enemy armor which is coming to attack this T. What are the options it has got? It can come frontal, it can come from the left flank, or it can come from the right flank. Now let us say this enemy decided, the British enemy decided to hit him from the left flank, as we are all seeing it. Now just watch. Watch what happens. He is now taking a left flanking maneuver. So all the orders that are passed by this T are enemy attacking from the left. This arm of the T comes back. Now you are facing the gun and you are now caught from three sides. Have you understood? You have tanks firing from top and bottom. You have the anti-tank guns firing from there. And when we analyze the tank kills, they were hit from three sides. Each damn tank of the enemy is hit from three sides. Now this will happen whichever way you attack. Let us say you decide to attack from the right. Let us say you decide to attack from the right, he will do the thing on the right. If you come frontally, both the arms will close like this, and whichever way you come, you will be hit from three sides. So you see how relevant all this has been right through the ages. Right through the ages, it is in use today, it will be in use tomorrow. There's a tremendous amount that we have learned from the Mahabharta. So I'll rest my case here, and the rest I'll try and take on in question answers. I'll be very happy to take any questions, especially from my historian friends. And may I suggest that we army men and historians should interact far more than we are doing as of now. Thank you.